Your brain, from knowing to doing. The first step to seriously knowing yourself is to find the humility to see that you probably don't. I'm now 70 years old, and it's been a good 40 years since I set up the first standardized international database on the human brain. Quite a mouthful, isn't it? But from this brain science vantage point and my experience as a doctor, I was exposed to multidisciplinary evidence of the brain from knowing to doing framework. And in this overview video, I share a summary of that 40-year evidence, but I focus on the factors that people have found most empowering. My biggest revelation has been that if you do not harmonize or align your rational thinking with your brain's emotions and intuition, you'll be like stumbling around in the dark. This video serves to try and switch on that light. Let's take a little tour about how your brain works, in other words, knowing, and how to create new sustainable habits, in other words, doing. For full context, I'd like to begin with a 2-minute summary of the earliest origins of the human brain. And by earliest, I mean Big Bang early. The idea that everything in the universe is interconnected and that each of us is a microcosm of the universe is not just a concept. 99% of our brain and body are made up of atoms such as hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen that were created billions of years ago in stars and supernovas. Hundreds of millions of years ago, evolution shaped the DNA in every cell of every species, including us. Approximately 3 million years ago, it got dramatically interesting for the human brain. Our earliest human-like ancestors, Australopithecus, like Mrs. Ples over here, evolved in their backsides. This allowed early humans to walk upright and free their hands. You can see that Mrs. Ples's spine comes out of the back of her skull and brain, which meant she walked upright. Subsequent hominids evolved in brain size and capacities and tool discoveries. Our Homo sapiens brain is 3 times larger than Australopithecus. Remarkably, no other species' brain has had an expansion of anything like this trebling in size over the past 3 million years. Spectacular adaptive success of humans began in the cradle of humankind in southern Africa and waves of migration across the planet. Human population growth began in earnest with the advent of agriculture, and that was a mere 12,000 years ago. The pace of technological innovation since then has been astounding. The printing press, the industrial era, the information age, the World Wide Web, the brain era, and now AI. Is your brain ready to harness the array of current technologies and supercomputers and generative AI? Or will you become a cog in the new AI industrial complex matrix? Knowing your brain. Despite the astounding complexity of the brain, and much that we do not know, there is a lot that we do know about the essence of how all human brains work. The glaring brain insight that took me the longest to see is that above all, the brain prioritizes shortcuts and short-term. Shortcuts to ensure safety first, the brain's main organizing principle, and short-term for instant reward gratifications once safety is assured. The relatively recent trebling in brain size empowered the human brain with logic, empathy, and the capacity for longer-term thinking. Let's unpack this a bit more. By imagining our actual brain rather than just these concepts or the words, I'll start with a snapshot of your brain's components and basic architecture. Your brain is 3 pounds and comprised 85 billion neurons, each with 5,000 connections to other neurons. That is over 100 trillion connections. Each neuron has 20,000 genes in its DNA. The brain is an ongoing electrochemical symphony. Each neuron activates other neurons with one of its many brain chemicals that cause it to fire and send an electrical signal to release chemicals to excite or inhibit other neurons in its network. Your brain has a very elegant architecture. 2 halves or hemispheres, four lobes, sensory input, and motor output networks via central relay nucleus, the thalamus, and memory of what is most meaningful to you. Okay, that's enough of the blueprint basics. Let's return to the main brain game, shortcuts, short-term, and rationality that navigate our approximately 50,000 daily thoughts. The 4 key processes that govern your thoughts, your decisions, and behaviors are emotions, intuition, feelings, and rationality. Emotion and intuition occur automatically, non-consciously, in other words, unconsciously. But you are consciously aware of your feelings and your rational thinking. So let's have a look at each of these 4 key processes. Emotions are a shortcut alarm system in your brainstem that helps you interpret environment and body language cues of what is threatening or rewarding. They are a key part of your automatic shortcuts for safety and short-term gratification. Intuition is a rapid best guess processing network of your most likely effective decision at any point in time, and it is best not to underestimate your intuition. Feelings are your body activations, such as sweating or a gut reaction, triggered by your emotions, intuitions, and limbic system. Rational is your conscious, deliberate check of the details, using your frontal cortex of what is your best decision option. And if any decision you make is not optimal, it will self-correct you. How these four key processes interact and create your unique personality and behavior is also influenced by your genetic predispositions and early conditioning. The best known personality factor is whether you are socially an introvert or an extrovert. Let's look at that for a sec. Introverts are inherently more aroused and extroverts are less aroused. Most people think it's the other way around, but it's not. What do I mean by that? Introverts are self-aroused and can become too aroused from too much input, often in the form of other people. So they need to recalibrate by spending time alone. And they prefer time to self-reflect before reaching decisions and speaking about them. Extroverts, on the other hand, like myself, need external input from others to increase this baseline low arousal, and we are open to making rapid decisions, but with subsequent iterations. Another personality factor that explains many aspects of behavior is whether a person is a negative pessimist or a positive optimist. That's the what basic brain framework. But it is the timing and interconnections within and between these neural networks that make the magic happen. That determines who you are, how effective you will be, how resiliently you'll cope, and the extent to which you will thrive. Emotion and intuition occur non-consciously within a fifth of a second. You are consciously aware of your feelings and your rational thinking from about half a second onwards as you implement your decisions and personality and your preferential behaviors. In other words, by the time you say, I feel upset, I feel frustrated, or I feel excited, your non-conscious emotions have already happened to you and have been sorted through your vast array of past experiences or information. Yes, the human brain is the most complex system in the known universe, but its essence and complementarity of functions are kind of rather straightforward so far, right? Straightforward? So if that's the case, why can life sometimes be so challenging? Well, here's a spoiler alert. There are two distorting and sneaky issues at play in your brain that wreak havoc and are very clever at hiding out. By understanding the two trip-ups, you will become more powerful and you will recognize when they are being weaponized against you. First up is the profoundly ugly reality of biases. Over 100 non-conscious negative and positivity biases influence our thoughts, personal and financial decisions, behaviors, beliefs, and relationships. Biases are automatic shortcuts and short-term thinking errors that our brain uses to serve our safety and reward and simplify complex decision-making. The brain wants efficiency, first and foremost. Some of the best known biases are about gender, race, and age. Let me just go through a few examples of other biases because they're just so stark. Loss aversion. We feel the pain of losing more strongly than the pleasure of reward. Negativity bias. We pay much more attention to negative than positive information. Halo effect. The first aspect that we say about a person or a thing colors everything else. The most surreal bias to me is the scarcity bias, where we intensely want whatever we can't have. Like, seriously? The bias that most limits our personal growth is the confirmation bias. That is when we seek out information that best validates our beliefs and we ignore the disconfirming evidence. The most dangerous bias that imperils humanity is the them-us bias, which exaggerates the us virtues of the groups to which we belong and finds fault and even demonizes the them who are different from us. Biases are used very widely, including in exploitative commercial marketing, a sea of clickbait, mainstream, and social media garbage, and in politics, especially by the more authoritarian leaders to polarize them-us groups with exaggerated fears and self-serving information distortion. Biases are the single most dangerous distortion in humans. If you take away nothing else from this overview brain video, get a handle on your biases. They are the greatest limitation to personal growth. The second matter that can derail you is when your brain's emotion and intuition and rational thinking do not harmonize. When they do, it's magical, resulting in aligned communication, peak performance flow, creativity, innovations, and success. Your brain is marvelously efficient and effective most of the time. But when the four key brain processes don't harmonize, it's like a fractured disconnection within ourselves. This fracture is a cauldron for hijacks of inauthentic communication and catastrophic behavioral outcomes. There's a growing realization that the criticality of rational thinking alone in decision-making has been overstated. Make no mistake, your gut intuition influences your rational thinking. With communication in relationships, teams, and groups, my absolutely favorite quote regarding fracture dynamics comes from Dr. Helen Schuckman, that even a slight twinge of annoyance is nothing but a veil drawn over intense fury. Yep, that gave me a lot to think about when I first heard it. More generally, fracture dynamics is where anger, lust, and greed feed off each other, where rationalizations are conjured up, opportunists lurk, defenses are activated, self-regulation goes out the window, and what people say is not what they do. And it's where imposters put on their masks to land grab and self-aggrandize. Despite these two booby traps, the brain is remarkably adaptive and neuroplastic. We are not victims. We create our reality by choosing our own thoughts. How we respond to any situation is more important than the situation itself, particularly because that is mainly what we have control over. Knowing yourself includes assessing your brain. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Assess your brain online and self-reflect on the implications of your brain scores. Isn't that a wonderful mirror of ourselves? Just a handful of scores. And there's a link to 10 online assessments to know your brain on my website, www.dreviangordon.com. The brain database that I set up highlighted that we are all fluctuating along a mental health, well-being, peak performance continuum. All of us. We're never in one little pigeonholed state. It is a total continuum. Everybody has some extent of stress, depression, and mental health challenges. What differs between people is the extent of their genetic predispositions, their conditioning, their trauma, their life experiences, and their ability to cope. There is no them and us in the brain and mental health. There is only us. We are all part of that continuum, and tiny differences, plus luck, given the brain's highly interconnected dynamics, can have hugely different outcomes. Each mental health and brain disorder has a core deficit. Well-being is about achieving homeostasis, balance, and peak performance emerges with high brain harmonization and flow, sort of synchrony, where everything is in beautiful timing. Complementary brain healthy practices, interventions, or treatments can be brought together to help find the best personalized solution for the right person at the right time of wherever they are in the brain state continuum. How do the brain framework processes that I've outlined manifest in the real world? The more you deepen and harmonize your brain's critical thinking, the more you shape your authentic, most empowered self. Doing. How to create new habits. You're a composite of your thoughts and habits. We live in a time when incredible evidence exists that changing our thoughts change our brains, where we can literally choose ourselves by repeated activation of specific thoughts. And the same principle in reprogramming our thinking applies to our behaviors. By simply repeating desired, very specific behaviors, you will override undesirable ones and create new habits. And despite the staggering biological simplicity, there is another reality, and it's something you most likely know, that change can sometimes be hard. Change is hard because it threatens our safety and our comfort, and it triggers our fear of failure. Yep, that damn brain fracture zone has a life of its own. But there is a way to beat the fracture zone. The biggest gap in creating new habits is going from knowing to doing. To bridge that gap and face your brain's fear of failure, the benefit must be clear, simple, and worthwhile enough to activate your willpower to make it happen. The first and most important step is to have a brain-based plan. As Ben Franklin emphatically stated, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. A plan provides the safety that your brain needs to do anything. A plan includes rewards, which are your brain's driver for doing anything. And a plan based on non-threatening and winning principles that are doable and cannot fail. The Gordon 3-step habit plan distills what has been shown to work in people who generate sustainable new habits. And the 3 steps are readiness, repeat and rewire, and track and transfer into a lifestyle habit. Step 1. Are you ready? Because change is a threat to your comfort zone, it is better to wait until you are clear about your why and truly ready to commit to a habit plan than to attempt a new habit half-heartedly. Lukewarm readiness is more likely to lead to failure. Step 2. Repeat and rewire. The core of any new habit is a focused and very specific goal, wired by small steps. The brain has inherent neuroplasticity. Thoughts become outcomes. Neural networks that fire together, wire together. Small step rewiring works best if the steps are so simple to complete that they are almost failure-proof for daily success. Each small step will release a dopamine reward, and with each small step completion, you must also visualize the longer-term, compounded, big, sustainable benefits that are inevitable. That combination of an instant, immediate gratification, dopamine, win, buzz, as well as being a bit patient with the help of your frontal cortex and constantly foresee the longer term, larger benefit. And that combination is one of the major success markers of achieving a sustained habit. Bit of postponement of gratification, but you still get that immediate buzz from the small steps. Personalize what you will do using PARS, P-A-R-S. P is prompts. Anchor your new habit training to well-established daily habits that you already do on autopilot. So use them as the prompt. A is actions. Actions are the small step practice of the new habit immediately following the prompt. And as I said, every small step completion is success. Ensure that steady stream of small step wins. Provide yourself with nudges to repeat the small steps whenever you can during the day. Momentum, it's contagious. And R equals rewards. Self-reward. Congratulate yourself immediately after each daily successful small step has been completed. Even small rewards like a smile, a fist pump, or a positive affirmation such as "I am winning" are critical to ensure the habit of wiring with PARS. Begin with the 30-day challenge. Consolidate your habit in this 30-day challenge. The first and main step is to fill your PARS into your plan of what and when you will train each day. Download a 1-page success plan worksheet from my website. Mentally celebrate the first day and the first step of completion. It's a major milestone. Don't underestimate it. First step means you own it, it's yours, you're on, you're winning. Be increasingly present and immersive with each passing day's small step repetition. Self-reward the momentum at any stage. If your routine is not perfect or you falter, have no judgment. It's all about trial and error like any learning. Just keep to the plan and keep the end of the plan in mind. Discover what works best for you to strengthen and deepen your new habit wiring. This includes detailed visualizing it, affirming it, thinking it, writing it, and talking about it. Find what works best for you and keep magnifying that. Ensure your plan includes specific ways for becoming comfortable with negative, intrusive thoughts. If you resist negative thoughts, they will persist because we are what we focus on. So if we focus on the negativity, it'll magnify. So just let them come and go. Have no judgment of them. Just keep the end in mind. And doing that is a practice in itself. Be fully present. Don't worry about the past regrets or future fears. Worry about being in the moment. Have no judgment of those thoughts. Keep the end in mind. Share your habit-winning experiences with friends and family. That will trigger oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and that further boosts your confidence and motivation. You should feel hugely satisfied at the 30-day challenge completion milestone. Momentum is everything. When your brain is winning, it will drag you back to the empowering habit party. Step 3. Track and transfer. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. Seeing is believing. Every day, track your small step par wins and one thing that you improved on, and do that in your success plan. Track it. Even if it's a tiny improvement, such as any better practice quality, longer length, improved score, but any benefit that you felt. Also, use objective progress trackers whenever you can, like a scale for weight loss, or movement steps through a digital wristwatch for exercise, real-time continuous heart rate variability for stress, track your brain training scores, or sleep length wherever possible. Like training a muscle, the more you practice, the more you will see the results of your efforts. New habits are also the most assured way to rewire, harmonize, and automate any undesirable non-conscious habit into a conscious, deliberate, desirable behavior. Once you have transferred one habit into your daily life, you'll have the formula to choose any new habit to shape your authentic self. I'd like to end this brain tour by reinforcing 5 of the basic takeaways of the Brain from Knowing to Doing framework. 1. Know your brain's preferences for safety, reward, emotion, intuitive, and rational thinking. 2. Confront your biases. 3. Harmonize rational and intuitive processes for optimal performances. 4. Be present in the moment rather than preoccupied with your past regrets and future fears. And 5. Work smarter, not harder, with a brain-based plan for new, small-step rewiring habits. My conceptual takeaway from the Brain framework is that a constant search for meaning shapes our journey from birth to death, and that it matters less which doorway we enter into to discover our level of happiness, meaning, and purpose, and matters more that we integrate wisdom wherever we find it. The human brain and behavior conundrum has been at the core of human societies for thousands of years, as exemplified by this quote: "The only good is knowledge. The only evil is ignorance." But the world is also improving in many hopeful ways. However, there's also the fearful shadow of three main existential crises. Humans have lost control of the nuclear power unleashed by splitting the atom. There are now over 9,600 nuclear weapons in military service in 12 countries. Global warming and the degradation of the environment are out of control, and the chances are high that generative AI and supercomputers will result in large-scale job displacement and catastrophic information distortion. But AI will also have very positive, brain-empowering outcomes, such as education, precision medicine, and a new level of innovation. The human brain is fully capable of harnessing AI and of finding meaning and purpose beyond the capability of AI. It is only human malfeasance that will pervert the use of AI. There is an unprecedented fear of the pace of change and uncertainty, but there is also unprecedented hope for new possibilities of self-enlightenment. Join the brain revolution. There has never been a more pressing time to know, befriend, and enhance your brain from knowing to doing. In future videos, I will deep dive into the step-by-step journey from knowing to doing in a range of topics that we touched upon in the video, including harmonized decision-making, emotion, stress mastery in the moment, intuition, bias, memory, focus, positivity, money brain, mental health, the 5 pillars of health, spiritual and brain science doorways to wisdom, resilience, peak performance, creativity, and thriving with AI.